Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world where the cold wasn't just inconvenient, it was downright lethal. Imagine a place where winter wasn't measured by snowflakes on your window, but by how many neighbors didn't make it to spring. No space heaters, no hot cocoa, and definitely no heated car seats. Just you, the wind, and a desperate hope that your roof wouldn't cave in from the snow. You're going to walk those same roads tonight. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is for you. I'm curious which corner of the world you're snuggling into right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've been walking since dawn, and now, with the light fading fast, the wind begins to bite harder. The trees, bare and skeletal, creak under the weight of the coming season. Your boots crunch over frost-hardened earth, and every breath you take scrapes down your throat like cold iron. The woolen hood over your head does little to stop the chill, and it smells faintly of smoke and sheep. Winter has arrived. And you? You're nowhere near shelter. The year is something like 1347. You don't know the exact date because calendars are for monasteries, not for people like you. What you do know is that the river started freezing along the banks, the geese have stopped flying overhead, and the sun sets a little earlier each evening, as if even it is tired of staying out in the cold. Your village, if you can even call it that, is a half-day behind you now. A few dozen souls wrapped in patched cloaks and buried in smoke-blackened cottages. You left because they said there might be work up north, cutting firewood for a manor. They said the Lord was paying in rye bread and lard. You could live off that. Probably. But with every mile you trudge, the wind seems to whisper, bad idea. The cold in medieval winters wasn't just unpleasant, it was everywhere. It was in the marrow of your bones, in the cracked skin on your hands, in the silence of the fields. You wouldn't believe how quiet everything becomes when it's too cold for even the birds to care. And worse still, you wouldn't believe how loud your own thoughts get when your stomach's empty and there's no one left to talk to. You pause by a stone wall, what's left of some long-forgotten fence, and pull your cloak tighter. There's a distant sound, like a church bell maybe, but it could just be the wind through broken branches. Somewhere in the darkening horizon, the sun dies without ceremony. You remember your mother saying the wolves get bolder after sundown. That thought helps you keep walking. In truth, you've never even seen a wolf. But you've heard about them. And more importantly, you've heard what they do to travelers who stop too long on the road. Still, the first real danger tonight won't be wolves. It'll be the cold. Just the cold. People think you have to be buried in snow or caught in a blizzard to die of exposure. But in the 14th century? It could happen just like this, quietly, slowly. A small tear in your boot lets the frost creep in. You don't notice at first, but by the time you make camp, your toes are stiff, waxy. In a few hours, they'll go black. You might not even wake up in the morning. And here's the fun part, no one knows how cold it really was back then. Records were patchy, and thermometers weren't invented yet. But according to tree rings and ice cores and other very boring things you can't eat or wear, it was probably colder than you think. Historians call it the Little Ice Age, a few centuries when Europe shivered a little harder than usual. Some even say this cold was nature's punishment. That humanity had strayed too far from God, and the snow was his reminder. Others say it was just volcanoes and ocean currents doing their thing. Historians still argue about it. Of course they do. As the night deepens, your hands start to lose feeling. You try rubbing them together, blowing into your fingers, but your breath just comes out in pale clouds that vanish before they do any good. You remember an old trick, stick your hands under your arms. It helps a little. Not much. The stars overhead are cruelly beautiful. Cold, distant, and bright as they always are on clear winter nights. You'd almost admire them if your teeth would stop chattering long enough. You find a dip in the earth where someone left behind a bundle of straw. Maybe a shepherd camped here weeks ago. You press yourself into it, pulling your cloak around your legs. The straw is damp and smells faintly of goat, but you're not complaining. This is luxury, by medieval standards. Somewhere nearby, an owl calls. Somewhere even closer, your stomach growls in reply. You wonder if the manor house is even real. You wonder if you'll get there before your fingers turn black. You wonder how people back then did this every single year and didn't go completely mad. You wonder why no one ever writes winter ballads. It's always spring and courtship and lilies blooming. Not once have you heard a love song about frostbite and spoiled root vegetables. It's getting harder to think. That's normal. Cold slows the brain, they say. You chuckle softly to yourself, at least, you think you do. It could have just been your jaw cracking from the chill. You lie down in the straw and look up at the stars again. They don't care about your story. They've seen 1,000 winters. Maybe more. But you've only seen one. And you're not even through the first night yet. You don't remember falling asleep. But you remember waking up, sort of. The sky is still black, maybe just starting to smudge with a hint of blue. Your fingers feel like carved wood. They don't move when you tell them to. You try to stretch, but it feels like your whole body is wrapped in iron. The straw around you is crusted with frost. Even your breath sounds quieter now, like the cold is muffling everything. You sit up slowly, and every joint complains. You've never felt this old. Somewhere in your chest, something very primal reminds you, you need warmth. Soon. The only thing that matters right now is finding shelter. And as you climb to your feet and stagger through the brittle morning, you catch sight of something in the trees ahead, stone walls, a narrow chimney, and a thin stream of smoke curling into the dawn air. You don't think. You move. It's a cottage. Rough stone walls, patched thatch roof, crooked wooden shutters, exactly the kind of place you'd usually avoid, just in case the owner doesn't take kindly to strangers. But now? You'd take a punch in the face if it meant 5 minutes by a hearth. You knock. No answer. You knock again, louder. Still nothing. So you push the door open. It groans like an old man. Inside, the air is warmer, but only just. The hearth is still smoldering. A single clay pot hangs above the embers, but there's no sound, no movement. You step in slowly. The air is thick with the scent of ash, mildew, and something else. Something musky, like wet dog and moldy leather. A blanket rustles in the corner. You freeze. And then a voice, cracked and dry. Close the door. You're letting it in. It's a woman. Old. Her face is creased like dry earth. She's hunched by the wall under a pile of furs. One eye squints at you. The other is clouded with cataract. You murmur something, thanks, apology, whatever your frozen mouth can manage, and stumble toward the hearth. The warmth is meager. The logs are little more than coals, and you notice something odd, there's no firewood stacked anywhere. No axe, no chopped logs, no kindling. How do you keep the fire going, you ask? She doesn't look at you. Dung. You blink. She gestures at a heap by the back wall. You hadn't noticed it before, neatly stacked patties of dried animal dung. Cow, probably. Maybe horse. Hard to tell. You try not to inhale through your nose. It's all we have, she mutters. Wood's too dear. Trees are dead, or needed for tools. Dung burns slow, doesn't smoke too much. Good enough. You sit down by the hearth, careful not to touch anything. The clay pot above the coals smells faintly of onions and, well, mostly onions. Your stomach growls. She hears it. Share what I have, but not for free, she says. You fetch me more fuel. You look at the pile of dung and then back at her. Where would I find more? Past the fence. Follow the path. Look for steam. You're not sure what she means by that, but you're too cold and too hungry to argue. So you go. Outside, the wind has quieted, but the air is colder than before, sharp and dry. You follow the path past a low stone fence, past frostbitten cabbage rows, and then you smell it before you see it. Steam, rising from a pile of animal waste that's still warm. The cows are gone, probably slaughtered or sold, but the evidence of their time here lingers. You scoop what you can into a sack with a broken-handled shovel, trying not to gag. Your fingers burn from the effort. Not from heat, just strain, cold, and fatigue. By the time you return to the cottage, you're sweating despite the air. The woman hasn't moved. You dump the sack by the hearth and slump to the floor. She nods. Good. You'll live. You're not sure if that's a promise or a curse. As you eat a bowl of her oniony stew, which is more hot water than actual food, you begin to realize something. Most people in this world survive winter by scraping together whatever they can. Fire isn't a comfort, it's a daily struggle. Every hour of warmth is paid for in labor, smoke, and, sometimes, a noseful of cow dung. There's no central heating. No insulation. The walls of this cottage leak wind like a sieve. She's stuffed rags in the cracks, nailed up hides over the windows. It's better than nothing. But only just. You notice something else. There's no chimney. The smoke has nowhere to go. It seeps through the rafters, curls into your eyes, coats everything in soot. Your throat starts to itch. Your nose runs. Your eyes water. And this is how people lived. All winter. Every winter. In fact, in many parts of medieval Europe, chimneys didn't become common until the 15th century. Even then, they were for the rich. Ordinary folk built their fires in the middle of the room and let the smoke drift out through a hole in the roof, or not at all. Some historians still debate when exactly the shift to chimneys became widespread. What's clear is this: most homes were smoky, dark, and miserable. Yet somehow, people still survived. Or at least, most of them did. You ask the woman if she's always lived alone. She doesn't answer. Instead, she leans back against the wall and closes her eyes. You should leave by first light. Snow's coming. You nod. Not because you're ready, but because it's true. Tomorrow, you'll walk again. The cold will bite. The wind will cut. And you'll dream of chimneys and hot baths and insulated walls that don't exist yet. But for now, you lie down near the fire and let the smoke lull you into a shallow, coughing sleep. You're still not warm. But you're not freezing either. And in this world, that's victory. You wake up coughing. Thick smoke sits low in the room, clinging to the air like wet cloth. Your throat feels like someone lined it with wool and set it on fire. Your eyes sting, and your lips are dry and cracked. The old woman is gone, maybe outside, maybe vanished like a dream. The fire has died to embers again, barely glowing beneath the pot. You sit up slowly, groaning as your muscles protest. The stew from last night did little to restore you. Hunger is now a low, constant presence, like a second heart beating inside your ribs. You need food. But first, you need to move. The cottage door creaks open with a groan that might wake the dead. Outside, the morning is thick with mist, and frost covers the ground in a delicate crust. A few blackbirds peck at the frozen soil, their feathers puffed against the chill. Your breath curls out in clouds as you walk. No real plan, just movement to stay warm. Then you remember what the woman said: snow's coming. You believe her now. There's a weight in the air, a strange stillness. Even the birds seem nervous. You reach a small clearing where someone, long ago, tried to grow vegetables. All that remains now are the bones of a garden, rotted wooden stakes, a rusted hoe, and a single turnip half buried in ice. You pick it up like it's treasure. You're not proud. You chew the frozen root slowly, painfully. It tastes like old dirt and bitter regret, but it fills a hollow space inside you. This is winter food. Real winter food. In the Middle Ages, people didn't dream of stews brimming with meat and herbs. Most peasants subsisted on bread, turnips, leeks, and the occasional onion. If you were lucky, you had grain left over from the harvest. If you were unlucky, well, let's just say famine had a habit of knocking when the snow stuck around too long. You remember hearing stories back in your village about the Great Famine of 1315. 3 straight years of rain, failed harvests, rotting grain, and a winter so long that people started eating things they wouldn't normally call food. Bark. Rats. Leather shoes boiled in broth. Some say a few villages went further. Some say the hunger made monsters out of men. Of course, historians still debate how widespread the famine really was. Some records mention cannibalism. Others dismiss it as legend. But one thing is certain, when your stomach empties and stays that way, the rules start to change. You walk further, following a low stone wall that leads toward the edge of a small hamlet. If you can even call it that. 3 cottages. 1 roof half caved in. No smoke. No voices. You hesitate, but your stomach overrules your fear. Inside the nearest cottage, you find silence. And dust. And something else, a loaf of bread on a shelf. Moldy, yes. But still, bread. You don't ask why it's here. You don't wonder where the people went. You just sit, break off the greenest bits, and eat. And while you chew, your mind wanders. You think about the bread itself, how sacred it was back then. Not just a meal, but a miracle. Grain took months to grow, days to thresh, hours to bake. Losing a sack of flour in the winter was like losing a limb. Sometimes, people mixed sawdust or clay into their dough just to stretch it farther. Other times, they ate bread so dense and stale it had to be soaked in weak beer to make it chewable. There's an old saying, a dry crust with peace is better than a feast with strife. You wonder what monk came up with that one. Probably someone who never went to bed hungry. You finish the loaf and pocket a few crumbs for later. You're not proud. As you prepare to leave, you notice something carved into the wall above the doorframe. Just a few letters, almost invisible in the fading light. Kyrie eleison. You whisper the words. Lord, have mercy. You're not sure on whom. Outside, the wind picks up again. The air smells like snow. The sky has turned a dull, gunmetal gray. You start moving, not because you know where you're going, but because standing still means losing the little warmth you've managed to build. Your breath fogs with each step. The mist thickens. The path vanishes. And then, suddenly, your foot sinks. You stumble forward, knee-deep in snow. It came without warning. 1 hour, bare soil. The next, a white sheet rolling over the land like spilled flour. This is the trap of medieval winter, its unpredictability. No forecasts, no warnings, no apps to check. Just instinct, livestock behavior, maybe a prayer or two. And the snow is here to stay. You push forward, legs burning with effort. Your cloak is soaked at the hem, your boots filled with meltwater, and your hands, you can't feel your hands again. In the distance, through the fog, you spot a low roof. Another cottage? A barn? You move faster now, even as the snow thickens. 1 foot. Then another. Then. You're on the ground. Flat. Breathing hard. The fall doesn't hurt. But it scares you. Because you didn't notice it happening. And that's when you realize how cold you've really become. That strange, sleepy cold. The kind that whispers, just close your eyes. Just for a moment. But you remember what the old woman said. You remember the bread. The turnip. The smoke in your lungs. You remember that you haven't come this far to lie down and die in a snowdrift. So you get up. And you keep walking. Because this is winter. And winter doesn't care who you are. It only cares who keeps moving. You don't know how long you've been walking. The snow is relentless now. It falls sideways, driven by a wind so cold it burns. Your cloak is stiff with ice, and your breath forms thick clouds that vanish almost instantly into the gray void. All sound is muffled. The world is cotton-wrapped and still, except for your footsteps, crunching through the deepening drifts. One step. Then another. Then another. You pass a tree bent under the weight of frost. Its branches are warped, skeletal. A crow sits motionless near the top, wings tucked tight, like it's just waiting for everything to end. And honestly, you get it. Because the cold isn't just in the air now, it's inside you. In your bones. Your thoughts. Your memories. This isn't the kind of snow that invites snowball fights and mulled wine. This is siege snow. Starvation snow. The kind that once buried entire villages so deep they weren't found until spring. And when they weren't the same. You crest a low hill and see it, a narrow pass between two cliffs, just wide enough for a cart. You've heard of this place. Locals call it Dead Man's Hollow. Cheerful. Legend says a group of pilgrims got caught here one winter long ago. The snow came faster than expected, blocked both exits. They tried to light fires. Huddled together. Shared what food they had. And when that ran out, well, they say the last body found had bite marks on the arms. Small ones. Like from a child. Of course, historians still argue whether that story's true. Some say it was invented to scare travelers. Others say the bones prove otherwise. Either way, no one builds fires in the hollow anymore. You don't plan to linger. You move quickly, head down, but the wind turns vicious, funneling through the narrow passage like a whip. You press against the cliff wall, shielding your face with your arm, snow blowing sideways like salt in your eyes. Then, snap. You slip. It's not dramatic. There's no scream, no cinematic tumble. Just a sudden shift of weight, a patch of hidden ice beneath the snow, and your legs shoot out from under you. You hit the ground hard. The breath rushes out of your lungs in a grunt, and for a second, the whole world pulses red behind your eyes. Pain blossoms in your shoulder, dull, throbbing. Not broken. But not right either. You lie there a moment, snow piling onto your body like dust on a forgotten book. And then you hear something. A distant sound, low, metallic, rhythmic. Clang. 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 You sit up slowly. The sound gets louder. Not threatening. Just strange. Repetitive. You push to your feet, arm held close to your side, and limp toward the noise. Eventually, you find it. A small forge. Yes, a forge, out here, in the middle of nowhere. A lean-to shack built into the side of the cliff, barely visible under the snow. Smoke curls faintly from a chimney. The metal door is open, heat spilling out in waves. And inside, an old man hammering red-hot iron. He doesn't look up as you enter, just keeps working. His face is lined and red from the heat, beard singed at the ends. His hands are calloused, blackened, moving with muscle memory older than most churches. You stand there, dripping snow onto the floor, blinking at the sudden warmth. Finally, he speaks. You look like something the wolves spat out. You try to smile. It hurts. He jerks his chin toward the coals. Sit. Dry off. Don't touch anything. You obey. The heat is almost too much at first. Your fingers tingle painfully as feeling returns. Your wet clothes begin to steam. The man keeps hammering, a knife blade, maybe. Or a chisel. You can't tell. After a long silence, he asks, "What brings you through the hollow?" You shrug, then wince. Right. The shoulder. He grunts. Looking for work? You nod. Foolish time for it. You nod again. He doesn't offer food. Or his name. But he doesn't ask you to leave either. Instead, he tells a story, without pausing his hammering. Says he used to live in a village north of here. Made horseshoes and hinges. One winter, the river froze solid. No one could reach them. Supplies ran out. People got creative. Boiled leather, bark soup, rats. Then came the fever. He doesn't say much about that part. Just that when the thaw came, he walked south alone. Built this place to be far away from people. Far away from the noise. The hunger. The things people become when the cold stays too long. They always talk about wolves, he mutters. But you know what's worse? You shake your head. He looks up, eyes hard. Desperate men. The forge crackles. You sit in silence, thinking about your shoulder, the old woman's stew, the snow piling outside. You think about hunger. And how it makes monsters of men. There's a reason winter myths always feature demons, witches, changelings. It's easier to blame the dark on magic than admit it's always lived in us. Eventually, the old man offers you a blanket. Sleep if you want. I'll keep the fire going. You lie down on the floor, sore and grateful. The forge glows beside you like a captured star. Outside, the snow howls. But inside, you're warm. And that, tonight, feels like a miracle. You wake to the sound of embers snapping. The forge still glows, though dimmer now. The old man is asleep in his chair, head tilted back, mouth slightly open, like someone who hasn't rested in years and finally gave in. His hands are still black with soot. The hammer lies at his feet. Your shoulder aches, stiff but manageable. You test it slowly, flexing your fingers, rotating your arm just enough to wince. Outside, the wind has quieted, but the light coming in from the crack beneath the door is strange, blue-gray and cold. The snow hasn't stopped. It's just gotten heavier. More final, somehow. You sit up, brush ash off your clothes, and look around the little forge. There's a single shelf on the back wall, stacked with iron scraps, broken tools, and, oddly, a bundle of herbs hung to dry. Probably for the forge's fire. Maybe not. You spot a battered kettle beside a stack of clay cups. You pour some water into the kettle and hang it above the coals. The man stirs. You're still here, he rasps, rubbing his eyes. You nod. Didn't want to freeze solid. He snorts. Smart. The kettle whistles. You hand him a steaming cup, and he sips slowly, like it's gold. After a moment, you ask, "Do you ever wash?" His mouth curls in a lopsided smile. Only when it rains warm. The two of you drink in silence for a while. Then he asks, "You know how to make a fire?" You nod, cautiously. Good. Because most people don't anymore. You raise an eyebrow. He leans forward, warming his hands. They think it's just about striking flint. But you need dry kindling. Patience. The right shape. A fire's like a beast, you have to feed it slow, or it chokes. You think about that. About the fires you've seen, if you could even call them that. Smoky heaps, barely warm enough to thaw your boots. The burning dung back at the old woman's cottage. The wet logs that hissed more than burned. You ask, "What if you don't have wood?" He shrugs. Then you burn what you have. You nod, but your stomach turns at the memory of the dung heap. You want to live through winter, he says. You give up pride. Pride doesn't warm your bones. You finish your drink. Then he says something that makes you pause. You bathed recently? You blink. Excuse me? He gestures vaguely. You smell like someone who's still alive. Most don't by now. You laugh, maybe too loudly. It echoes strangely in the forge. Bathing in winter. Now that's a topic. Because in the medieval world, bathing during the cold months was not only rare, it was often seen as dangerous. People believed that washing in cold weather could let the cold in. That it opened the pores, made you vulnerable to illness, or worse. Some thought you'd catch death the minute you stepped out of a hot bath into cold air. And in fairness, they weren't entirely wrong. With no insulation, no towel heaters, no blow dryers, bathing in winter could kill you. One icy gust through a cracked window while your hair was wet, and suddenly you're shivering, your chest is tightening, and the village priest is preparing last rites. Bathhouses used to be a thing, especially in towns. Communal, warm, and surprisingly social. But by the 14th century, thanks to plague paranoia, they'd started closing down. People became suspicious of shared water, of warm steam, of skin. By winter, everyone stank. Even the rich. You mention this out loud, and the old man chuckles. That's why we kept rosemary in our clothes, he says. Not for health. Just so we could pretend we smelled like plants instead of sweat. You grin. So you've never bathed in winter? He leans back. Once. In 41. Slipped into a half-frozen stream trying to chase a pig. What happened? Lost the pig. You both laugh. And for a moment, the cold outside feels far away. But you know it's still there. Eventually, the old man stands. His knees pop like old hinges. He walks to a barrel by the door and lifts the lid. Inside is a mix of wood chips, bits of dried peat, and something else. Smells sharp. Herbal. A medieval firestarter blend. He scoops a handful into a leather pouch and tosses it to you. You'll need it, he says. You nod, slipping the pouch into your bag. Thank you. He waves it off. Don't thank me. Just don't freeze. You step toward the door. Snow piles high against it. You brace, then push, hard. It groans open. The outside world is white. Blinding. You shield your eyes. The snow reflects light like glass. Everything glows. You turn back to him one last time. What's your name? He considers for a moment. Then, does it matter? You smile. Guess not. And with that, you step out into the brightness. The cold slaps you across the face like it missed you. Snowflakes dance on your eyelashes. Your breath catches in your chest. But your boots are dry now. Your shoulders wrapped in linen. And there's a little pouch of warmth in your pack, clinking like a promise. You pull your cloak tighter, face the wind, and start walking. Because winter's not over yet. And you've got miles to go. The snow swallows your footsteps almost as quickly as you make them. It's afternoon now, maybe. Hard to tell through the thick clouds. The world is bleached white and flat, as if some god spilled milk across the land and forgot to wipe it up. Each step crunches, muffled. The cold air burns in your lungs like smoke. Your legs ache. Your wrapped shoulder protests with every movement, but you keep walking because there's no such thing as stopping in a medieval winter. And when you do stop, only one thing waits for you. Somewhere ahead, past a line of blackened trees, you spot the suggestion of a structure. Low. Crooked. Half-sunk in snow. You limp toward it. It's a cottage, or what's left of one. The roof has collapsed on one side, weighed down by years of ice and rot. But the other half is still standing, barely. You force the door open with your good arm, and inside, it's quiet. No smoke. No fire. Just the smell of dust and time. But there's something stranger. A pile of rags and straw arranged into a sort of nest near the hearth. A sleeping space. Someone had been here recently. More than that, someone had tried to keep warm. The ashes in the hearth are only a few days old. You sit down, easing your sore legs out, and huddle against the wall. There's a wool blanket nearby. Thin. Moth-eaten. But you wrap it around yourself anyway. And slowly, drowsiness creeps in. Your eyes grow heavy. The warmth in your chest is a trick, just your body giving up, mistaking death for sleep. You blink hard. Shake your head. No. Not yet. So you distract yourself the only way you can. You think about how people slept in winter. Not like you do now. Not curled up in fluffy duvets with bedtime playlists and white noise machines. Back then, sleep was survival. An act of strategy. In most medieval homes, there was just one heated room, if any. Whole families slept together near the hearth, sometimes on beds, often on straw-stuffed mats, side by side like bundled firewood. Dogs. Children. Grandparents. Sometimes even neighbors. Not for love. For warmth. And then there's the strange part, something that most modern people have never even heard of. Segmented sleep. Back then, people didn't sleep through the night in one long stretch. Instead, they had a first sleep and a second sleep. You'd go to bed shortly after dusk, say, 7 or 8 p.m., because what else were you going to do? No electricity. Candles were expensive. Reading was rare. So you'd drift off. But then, like clockwork, you'd wake up around midnight. Not fully alert, but conscious. You'd lie in the dark for an hour or two. Sometimes longer. Then, eventually, drift back into your second sleep, which would carry you through to morning. It wasn't seen as insomnia. It was just normal. People would use the interval to pray, meditate, stoke the fire, tend to animals, or, occasionally, make more people. Monks wrote about it. Physicians advised it. Everyone from farmers to nobility lived like that. There was even a word for it, dorval. The wakeful rest between dreams. You imagine it now, lying awake in a cold room, frost on the window, the embers dying. Listening to the breathing of your family around you. The occasional cough. The wind whining through the shutters. And somewhere between those two sleeps, a strange stillness. A pause in the middle of the night when nothing moved and no one expected it to. A pocket of time that belonged to no one. You wonder what they thought about then. God? Hunger? Spring? Or maybe, just like you, they thought about not freezing to death before sunrise. You lie there, listening to the wind outside claw at the walls. Your body trembles slightly, not from fear, but from the instinctual knowledge that if you drift off too long in this cold, you might not wake up. Still, your eyelids sag. So you lean into the tradition. Let yourself have a first sleep, just a short one. The straw rustles as you adjust, pulling the tattered blanket higher. Your back aches. Your shoulder throbs. But the silence of the cottage wraps around you like a dull lullaby. You promise yourself you'll wake in an hour. You promise. But promises made in winter are soft things. And the snow doesn't keep track. When you open your eyes again, everything's different. The cottage is darker now. The light outside has turned thick and blue, like dust pressed against glass. Your breath fogs in short bursts. The air inside is colder than when you fell asleep, which means the sun is gone, and the night has returned. You move to sit up, and something cracks beneath your shoulder. Not your bones, thankfully, but a piece of frozen straw. It's stiff now. Brittle. Your blanket has slid halfway off. The chill seeps in like a thief. You've overslept. Not hours. Not days. But in this world, and this season, even a short nap can turn deadly. You try to shake off the fatigue, rub some life back into your arms. One hand is slow to respond. Numb at the tips. No more first and second sleep for you tonight. You need to move. Now. Outside, the snow has stopped, but it's left behind a world remade. Everything is blanketed in white, glistening under the pale smear of moonlight. Trees bend low. The air is still. But it's not silent. There's a sound, soft, deliberate. Footsteps. Not yours. And not alone. You crouch by the ruined doorway, breath shallow. You can't see them yet, but you hear them. Crunch. Crunch. Not fast. Not in a hurry. They know you're there. Then, out of the trees, two figures. Cloaked. Hoods drawn. They stop a dozen paces away. You can't see their faces. You stand, slowly. One raises a hand. Not in threat, but greeting. Then the other calls out. Have you eaten? You blink. That's the question? Before you can answer, the first figure steps forward, pulling something from beneath their cloak. A bundle of cloth. Bread. Maybe cheese. Something wrapped tight against the cold. We've got room in our wagon, he says. They're travelers. Maybe merchants. Maybe something else. But in winter, you don't ask too many questions. You just count your blessings and your limbs. You nod slowly, then take a cautious step forward. That's when you see it, the sled. Not a wagon, exactly. A flat platform pulled by a skinny, weary-looking mule. Piled high with blankets, baskets, and two children sleeping under furs. A family. The woman looks at you, eyes narrow but not unkind. Where are you headed? You shake your head. Anywhere warmer. She huffs a laugh. Aren't we all? They offer you space on the back. You climb aboard carefully, slipping between sacks of flour and a rusted cooking pot. The mule groans but doesn't protest. And then, slowly, the sled creaks forward through the snow. You exhale for the first time in what feels like hours. The cold hasn't gone. It still bites at your cheeks, whispers down your collar. But now, you're not alone. And that counts for something. The man offers you a piece of the bread. It's hard. Dense. But real. You bite into it and feel something like hope. As the sled rolls forward, they tell you their story. They left their village 2 days ago. Frost killed the cabbages. The pigs went sick. The well froze. They planned to wait it out, but the roof collapsed in the last storm. Almost crushed the youngest. That was the sign. Now they're headed south. A cousin in the valley. Or a monastery. Or just something better. The woman says this isn't the worst winter she's seen. The man disagrees. They argue gently, like people who've known each other through hard seasons. You ask about the children. Slept through the storm, the woman says proudly. Tucked under every blanket we had. I had to lie on top of them like a log to keep them warm. And then she says something that sticks in your mind. The trick isn't surviving the cold. It's staying human while you do it. You look at her, and she shrugs. Cold makes people hard. Mean. Forgetting things. You have to choose not to. You nod. She's right. Because winter in the medieval world wasn't just about keeping your fingers and toes. It was about keeping yourself. The part of you that shared a crust of bread. That sang a lullaby. That believed spring would come again, even when the snow said otherwise. Historians often write about famines, disease, crop failures, but they rarely mention the moments like this. The soft ones. The human ones. Moments when someone asks, "Have you eaten?" instead of, "What do you have?" Moments when people ride together through the dark, not because they have to, but because no one should face the cold alone. The sled creaks over a frozen stream. The stars have come out now, bright pinpricks in the black sky. You lie back against the sacks, arms folded across your chest, listening to the steady plod of hooves. The world is still bitter. Still frozen. But for the first time in days, maybe weeks, your bones don't shake. Not from cold. Not from fear. You're not warm. But you're not alone. And that makes all the difference. The stars will slowly overhead. You lie on the sled as it creaks along the snow-packed path, eyes half-lidded, shoulder-wrapped, fingers tucked beneath your cloak. The wind has quieted into a whisper, just enough to remind you it's still there. The mule pulls on, head low, steps steady. Its breath steams in the air like a slow exhale from some ancient forge. Ahead, the trees thin. And then, like a vision, you see it, firelight. Flickering yellow gold dancing behind a stand of pine. Not a forest fire, too small. A campsite, maybe. Or a watch post. The woman sees it too. She nudges her husband. He tenses slightly, but doesn't change course. You all know the rules of winter. Fire draws company. Company is a risk. But so is staying cold. As the sled rolls closer, you catch the outline of a shelter, a crude timber lodge, smoke curling from a slanted chimney. A small outpost, maybe. A way station. Something old. Something forgotten. A man steps out. Not a guard. Not a bandit. Just another traveler, cloaked, wrapped in furs, holding a spear for comfort more than threat. He squints through the dark. The husband calls out, "Cold night." The man nods. Colder if you're standing still. And that's that. An invitation. You pull up beside the lodge. Inside, the room is small, but not cramped. One hearth. 4 walls. 2 others already lie there, an old woman chewing something leathery, and a thin boy wrapped in a coat far too large. They don't speak. They don't need to. Everyone here knows the code: share space, keep quiet, sleep light. The man with the spear stokes the fire. You and your new companions find a corner near the warmth. A blanket passes from one child to the other, like it knows whose turn it is to not shiver. You settle in, letting the glow of the flames paint your vision in orange and gold. And then someone breaks the silence. Did you hear about the winter of '94? It's the old woman. Voice like brittle parchment. She doesn't wait for an answer. Said the Thames froze all the way through. People set up stalls right on the river. Selling eels and sweetmeats. Some fool even built a bowling alley. A chuckle from the man with the spear. Until the ice cracked. They said it sang before it broke. A sound like church bells underwater. You listen, half lost in the firelight. Because she's not wrong. The Little Ice Age, they called it, though no one at the time had a name for it. Just a long, cruel series of winters that seemed to stretch across generations. Glaciers crept like fingers down mountains. Crops failed. Markets died. Whole towns lost population, not just from starvation, but migration. People fled to cities, monasteries, even foreign shores. Some winters were so bad, rivers froze solid. Not just in England, but across Europe. The Seine. The Rhine. The Danube. But with the cold came creativity. You remember stories, some told in taverns, others in books you once glimpsed by candlelight, of frost fairs. Temporary carnivals held right on the ice. Booths, musicians, jesters performing in scarves and boots. Bonfires crackling against the ice, while vendors sold pies and printed souvenirs that said things like "this sheet of paper was printed on the frozen Thames." Madness. Beautiful, shivering madness. People built fires right on the ice, the boy mutters. To stay warm. Someone snorts. That's how you die twice. The fire crackles again. The boy grins faintly. Still worth it. You smile too, because you know what he means. Even in the harshest cold, humans reach for music, for laughter, for the absurd. We make carnivals on frozen rivers, not because we're safe, but because we're alive and stubborn. The fire's warmth deepens, and you stretch your legs out, careful not to bump anyone. The others settle in. The couple you came with whisper quietly to one another. The spearman nods off sitting upright. The old woman rocks slightly, humming some forgotten tune. You're not quite ready to sleep. Not yet. So you watch the flame. And you wonder. What would you have done during a frost fair? Would you have skated across the ice in wooden shoes? Bought a warm mug of something spiced and thick? Watched jugglers slip and tumble? Or would you have just stood still, eyes lifted to the sky, amazed that even winter could be beautiful? Because sometimes, survival isn't just bread and fire. Sometimes it's stories. Sometimes it's noise and color in a season that tries to mute everything. You pull the borrowed blanket tighter around you. The fire flickers. A log shifts. Someone coughs in their sleep. And you let your eyes close, not in fear this time, not like before, but with a strange, quiet peace. Outside, the snow may fall. The night may howl. But here, in this moment, with strangers and a fire, you are safe. You are still human. You wake to warmth on your face. Not firelight, sunlight. Pale, filtered, but unmistakably real. You blink against it, dazed. The shelter is quieter now. Half the people are gone, left at dawn, no doubt, chasing roads and hopes before the next storm rolled in. Only the boy remains, still asleep, curled like a cat beneath someone else's cloak. The man with the spear is gone. The fire's out. A thin line of smoke rises from the hearth's dying breath. You stretch, every joint groaning. Your shoulder protests, but not as loudly as before. You're alive. And oddly, almost comfortable. Until your stomach growls. Back to the business of surviving. You gather your things quickly, what little you have, and step outside. And there it is. The world, unveiled. The snow has stopped. The wind has stilled. Above you, clouds drift lazily across a cold blue sky. Everything sparkles, like someone dusted the earth in powdered glass. The trees are laced with frost, their branches glittering. The road ahead is clearer now. Still treacherous, but visible. It's a rear window. You start walking. Your boots crunch over frozen ruts and patches of ice. Your breath hangs like banners behind you. There's no map in your hand, but your feet follow instinct, downhill. Toward lower ground. Toward food. Maybe people. Maybe even warmth. After an hour, you come to a crossroads. The signpost is old, half buried in snow, the wood cracked and leaning like it's just as tired as you are. One arm points east, Monastery of St. Ealdred, 2 leagues. You hesitate. Monasteries in winter, now that's a gamble. Sometimes they were havens. Fires, bread, even wool if the abbot was feeling generous. Other times, they were walled fortresses. Cold in more ways than one. No room at the inn. No room at all. But 2 leagues? That's walkable. And even monks can't ignore someone who looks half dead. You set off. The road curves gently, cutting through snowbanks and bare trees. Birds flit overhead, fat little robins and jackdaws, braver now that the storm has passed. One perches on a stump nearby, peering at you with suspicion, as if trying to decide whether you're food or just competition for crumbs. You speak to it, softly. I'm not here to steal your lunch. It blinks. Then flies off. Typical. The sun creeps higher, and for a moment, you almost feel warm. Your skin tingles, your limbs loosen. There's mud showing through the snow in places. The smell of pine sap drips from the thawing trees. And you realize something odd, you're sweating. In winter, that's not victory, it's a threat. Because once you're wet, and the cold returns, as it always does, you are in danger again. A soaked shirt is a death sentence when the wind rises. You adjust your layers, loosen your cloak, keep moving. Then, in the distance, you hear it, bells. Faint. Rhythmic. 2 notes, repeated slowly. Not festive, monastic. A call to prayer. Or maybe to dinner. You're not sure which would be better. You quicken your pace. And then, through the trees, you see it. A small complex of stone buildings, walled in ivy and frost. Smoke rises from 2 chimneys. A bell tower leans slightly to one side, its stones worn smooth by centuries of wind and snow. Beyond the gate, quiet movement. Black robes. A shovel scraping ice. A sheep bleating in complaint. The monastery. You pull your cloak tight and step up to the gate. There's no bell, no knocker, just a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron. You raise your good hand and knock. Once. Twice. The door creaks open. A face appears. Thin. Stern. Hooded. The monk looks you over. Says nothing. You clear your throat. I need shelter. Just for the night. He eyes your shoulder. Your boots. The mud on your hem. Then he steps aside. That's it. No questions. No sermon. No judgment. Just space. Inside, the air is warmer, though not exactly warm. But it's dry. And quiet. You're led down a narrow corridor lined with old wood and the scent of beeswax. The monk gestures toward a bench near the kitchen door. Wait. You sit. You wait. Moments pass. Then the door opens again. A younger monk appears, balancing a wooden bowl and a heel of bread. He sets them beside you without a word. Stew. Thin. Cabbage and barley. But hot. You eat slowly, deliberately. And with each bite, something in you settles. Because this is what people dreamed of in winter. Not feasts. Not furs. Just this, a roof, hot food, and the absence of fear. You can taste the salt, the time, the effort someone put into making this small comfort possible. It's not delicious. But it feels like mercy. Somewhere, a bell tolls again. A reminder that time still moves, even when the world seems frozen. You finish your meal. The young monk returns, nods, and gestures for you to follow. Down another corridor. To a small room with a straw-filled mattress and a wool blanket folded neatly on top. No fire. No luxuries. But a door that shuts. And silence. You sit on the edge of the bed, and for the first time since the storm began, you let go. Your body slumps. Your mind wanders. You think of the frost fairs. Of the boy on the sled. Of the forge. Of the old woman who fed you soup by firelight. Of the road behind you, and the miles still to come. And then, softly, like a lullaby sung by stone, you sleep. Not like the first time. Not from exhaustion. But because, for now, you are safe. You wake before dawn. Not because of cold, or pain, or some creeping fear, but because of bells. Deep and slow, tolling across stone and snow like the heartbeat of the monastery. You lie still for a moment, listening. 1, 2, 3, the call to matins, the monk's midnight prayer, though the hour is closer to 4 a.m. than midnight. You sit up, feeling your joints protest and your stomach whisper for more stew. But there's a strange peace in this place. A kind of silence that's not empty, but full of footsteps padded in sandals, of whispered prayers, of snow melting on stone. Outside your narrow window, the sky is dark blue and spangled with stars. It's still winter. Still brutally cold. But this time, you woke on a mattress. Wrapped in a wool blanket. Alive. You stretch carefully, shoulders still tight but improving, and lace your boots with half-frozen fingers. They've given you a jug of water, cool, clean, without ice. Beside it, a chipped cup and a folded note in plain Latin. The road waits when the body is ready. Leave when you choose. Bread in the West Room. You smile, quietly. Monks don't waste words. After eating the offered bread, of course, dark, but still warm, you step outside the guest house. The cold returns, biting and immediate, but it doesn't shock you the way it once did. Your body's adapting. Maybe your mind too. The snow crunches underfoot. The sky is starting to pale at the edges, just the faintest hint of morning, like someone brushing white paint on the edge of a black canvas. And that's when you see them. Graves. Small, uneven stones rising from the earth just beyond the wall. Half covered in frost, names fading, symbols half swallowed by lichen. Some are recent, wooden markers instead of stone. Others lean at odd angles, as if bowing toward some invisible weight. You walk among them carefully. And as you do, you remember, monasteries weren't just shelters. They were hospices. Places people went not only to pray, but to die. In the harshest winters, when the roads became death traps and famine knocked at every door, people would come here not for healing, but for mercy. For last rites. For a bed to close their eyes in. For someone to whisper Latin into their ear as they slipped away. Many never made it through the gate. Some made it, only to spend their last hours in the same straw beds used by countless others. And yet, they came. Because even in a world without central heating or antibiotics or mercy laws, monasteries were one of the few places that might say yes when the world said no. You pause by one of the newer graves. A girl's name, barely legible. No age given. Just a date, midwinter, 3 years ago. A rosary carved into the top, worn smooth by rain. You kneel for a moment, not to pray, but to simply acknowledge she didn't freeze alone. Then you rise, turn toward the gate, and walk back toward the road. As you pass the chapel, a monk sweeping the steps nods once. You nod back. Nothing more needs saying. Outside the walls, the wind returns, not cruel but persistent. It tugs at your cloak like a bored child. The road stretches ahead, frozen dirt overrun by patches of old snow. But it's there. Visible. And that's something. You think of all the people who've walked this road before you. Peasants with frostbitten toes. Pilgrims with holes in their shoes. Beggars with nothing but hope. Soldiers retreating from battles fought in snowstorms so thick they never saw their enemies' faces. You think of the stories you've heard, the ones too strange to be made up. Like the siege of Bergheim, where defenders caught in a 3-month winter survived by boiling parchment into soup. Imagine that, eating your tax records for dinner. History's not silent on the taste, like glue, but worse. Or the tale of the frozen bishop, a poor soul who refused to wear wool under his robes for reasons of spiritual purity, and turned into something resembling a popsicle mid-sermon. The parishioners assumed he was simply moved by the Spirit. It wasn't until someone tried to lift him that they realized he was stiff with it. To be fair, historians still debate that one. They also argue over the real causes of the Little Ice Age. Solar cycles. Volcanoes. Ocean currents. Take your pick. What they rarely talk about is what it felt like to live through it. Not just the science, but the sensation. The wet straw. The raw hands. The way silence in winter is not peace, but absence. You walk, boots crunching. Each step is slower now, not from exhaustion, but from thought. Because for the first time, you're not just trying to survive. You're starting to understand what winter was. What it meant. Not just snow and starvation, but surrender. To time. To death. To nature. And yet, no one truly surrendered. They sang. They danced. They carved prayers into wood and laughter into stories. They endured. And so do you. Up ahead, the trees part, revealing a small stone bridge arched over a frozen stream. The frost clings to its edges like lace. You cross it. And with that step, something shifts, not in the weather, but in you. You've made it through another night. Another storm. Another chapter. And though you know more snow waits ahead, for the first time since your journey began, you believe you might just make it. The bridge creaks under your weight as you step across, the stone slick with a skin of frost. You keep your eyes down, careful with your footing. One wrong move in this weather and it's not just bruises you're collecting, it's a broken leg, a slow death, and maybe your name fading on a wooden plank behind a monastery wall. But you make it. On the far side, the land changes. Gently sloping hills stretch out ahead of you, dotted with sparse trees and the occasional stone fence. There are signs of life here, faint but real. Cart tracks frozen into the mud. Scattered footprints. A thin ribbon of smoke curling from a chimney far in the distance. The world is waking up, just a little. You press on, boots crunching through crusted snow. The wind bites at your face. You pull your hood tighter. There's a rhythm now to your walking, slow, deliberate, the steady pacing of someone who knows that speed doesn't win in winter. Endurance does. And as you walk, the hunger creeps in again, not sharp like a knife, but dull, persistent. Like a door you never quite manage to close. You reach into your bag, fingers brushing over the pouch of fire-starting herbs from the forge, a reminder of warmth. You still have the monk's bread. You chew a corner slowly, savoring every gritty, dense bite. And then, you hear something. A creaking. A jingle. You freeze. Over the next rise comes a wagon, 2 oxen pulling a heavy cart draped in cloth and hay. A man walks beside it, bundled in furs, face nearly swallowed by his hood. Behind him, a woman rides, hunched over the reins, squinting into the wind. They see you. You raise a hand in cautious greeting. They hesitate, just a second, but then the man waves you over. You approach carefully, eyes scanning the cart. No weapons. No soldiers. Just people. He speaks first. You headed to the valley? You nod. The woman gestures to the back. Room on the hay, if you don't mind smelling like goat. You grin. At this point, I'd pay to smell like goat. They laugh, a sound that startles even them. You climb aboard. The hay is dry, if a little itchy, and the warmth of the oxen, the blankets, and sheer body heat starts to soak into your bones. The man hands you a skin. Water. From the well. Don't gulp it. It'll fight you. You sip. It's cold, metallic, but glorious. The wagon creaks forward. As you travel, they talk. Their names are Alric and Fina. Brother and sister. Heading south to find a cousin who may or may not still be alive, depending on which rumor you believe. Their village was raided 2 winters ago, bandits, not soldiers. The kind of violence that doesn't make it into history books because it wasn't big enough. Cold makes men crazy, Alric mutters. And cowards bolder. You ask what they've seen this winter. 2 towns frozen to silence, Fina says. 1 man dead on the road with bread still in his hand. And a church, she shudders, half burned, full of ash and bone. You fall quiet. Not all dangers in winter come from nature. Sometimes it's other people. You pass a frozen field with the remnants of a scarecrow, its head missing, arms sagging under the weight of snow. Nearby, a fence post is draped with something that might have once been a cloak. Or a warning. The wagon keeps moving. They tell you stories to pass the time. Like the tale of the wolf trials, how, during a string of bitter winters in eastern France, starving villagers claimed wolves were devouring their children and livestock. So they held actual trials, sentencing wolves to death in mock courts. Full process, accusers, witnesses, even defense. 1 wolf was even pardoned on lack of evidence. You're joking, you say. Fina shakes her head. People get weird when they're cold and scared. And that, more than any history book, explains medieval winter. You don't just fight frost. You fight fear. You try not to invent monsters when you can't explain why the food's gone and the light never comes. Alric leans forward. You know what's worse than wolves? You wait. Neighbors, he says darkly. You share a fire one day, and the next they're breaking your door for your last sack of flour. The wagon falls silent. A gust of wind rushes down the hill. But you know he's not wrong. The cold forces people to choose mercy or survival. And some people stop believing they can have both. But not everyone. You look at Alric and Fina, strangers who offered a ride. You remember the monk's bread. The old man's forge. The woman with the sled. People who, against all odds, kept a little warmth in their souls. Maybe that's what winter reveals, not just who can survive, but how they choose to. By late afternoon, the valley appears. You crest the final hill, and below you, the snow dips into a cradle of smoke and slate roofs. A village, small, maybe 30 houses, but alive. You see carts, thin trails of livestock, and even, miracle of miracles, people moving. Real people. Not ghosts. Fina sighs. There. That's where we leave you. You nod. They pull the wagon to a stop just past the tree line. You hop down, legs stiff, heart pounding, not from fear, but hope. Real, painful, aching hope. You thank them. Fina smiles faintly. Just pass it on, yeah? You nod. Always. And then you walk. Toward chimneys. Toward voices. Toward the next chapter. The cold still claws at your back, but now it feels smaller, like something you can outrun. Because you're not walking into winter anymore. You're walking through it. The village is no paradise. But after what you've endured, it might as well be. You pass through the low wooden gates just as the sun dips behind the hills, painting the snow in amber and shadow. Smoke curls from chimneys. Dogs bark, thin, wary things. Chickens scratch through the slush near a crooked well. And from one of the cottages, a voice calls out something that might be a greeting or a warning. It doesn't matter. You're inside. Among people. And the smell, oh, the smell. Not flowers or perfume. No. The scent of stew, wood smoke, wet wool, and something fried in lard. You want to cry. Your stomach lurches like it's remembering how to be alive again. A child stares at you from behind a fence. Her nose is red, her hands gloved in rags. She doesn't blink. You wave. She doesn't wave back. This is a place that has survived the cold, but not without scars. You ask for the local headman, and they point you toward a longhouse near the center of the village, larger than the others, with a green shutter hanging by a single hinge. Inside, you find him. A man built like a barrel, beard thick with frost, seated beside a hearth so small it might warm a cat. He eyes you without standing. Name? You give one. Doesn't matter if it's real. He nods. What do you want? Just a place to sleep. I can work. He grunts. Then gestures to a bench by the wall. Floor's clean. That's more than most have. You drop onto it with gratitude. Not comfort. Not warmth. But shelter. And in winter, that's a luxury. After a few minutes, someone brings you a wooden bowl, barley, turnips, something gray. You eat it like it's a feast. As the fire hisses, the headman speaks again. Where you from? You give a vague answer. Long walk. You nod. He studies you. Then, in a voice low and flat, says, We lost 9 last month. 2 to fever. 1 froze in his own bed. Rest just disappeared. You look at him, unsure if he expects an answer. He doesn't. Just leans forward, pokes the fire, and mutters, You think you've beaten winter, and then it reminds you, you are not done yet. He's not wrong. You ask about work, and he points you toward the stables. Shovel the slop out before sunup. Don't steal anything. Don't die in there. I don't want to explain the smell to my wife. A deal, as far as deals go. You accept. That night, you lie on the floor of the longhouse, pressed against the wall with two other strangers, a boy with a hollow cough and a woman with a hand missing 3 fingers. No one speaks. You fall asleep to the sound of breathing, the occasional shuffle, and the knowledge that for the first time in days, there's no wind against the windows. Underscore 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 underscore. In the morning, you wake before light. The stable is dark, steaming with animal heat. A cow lowing. A sleepy rooster peering down from a beam. You find the shovel and get to work. It's disgusting. And it's wonderful. Because it's something to do. Something to give the day structure, to remind your muscles they still belong to you. By the time you're done, your face is flushed from exertion, not cold. Your breath no longer looks like smoke in the air. And that's when you notice it. Drips. From the eaves. From the branches. From the icicles once sharp and proud, now sagging. Melting. Not much. Just a few drops. But it's enough. You step outside, face upturned. And you feel it. A shift. The snow hasn't vanished. The wind hasn't died completely. But there's a softness in the air now. A give in the ground. A song beneath the silence. Spring isn't here. But it's coming. The villagers move slowly, cautiously, like animals testing the edges of a trap. No one says the word aloud to thaw, but they all feel it. One of them nods at you. Just once. Recognition. Not of who you are, but of what you are. Another body that made it through. Another face the frost didn't steal. And in a place like this, that's the only introduction that matters. You spend 3 more days in the village. Working. Eating. Listening. You learn that a neighboring hamlet was buried in a snow drift so deep the steeple was the only thing above the surface. That wolves have been spotted closer to the tree line. That a midwife lost her hands trying to dig out a newborn from an ice-locked hut. That one man swears he saw a white bear walking on 2 legs and muttering Latin. They all roll their eyes at that one. You patch your cloak. Rest your legs. Let the wound on your shoulder begin to knit beneath the poultice a silent woman smeared on it without a word. And then one morning, you wake up and just know. It's time. Not because it's warm, but because you believe you'll make it. And that's the first sign that winter is loosening its grip, not on the earth, but on you. You pack what little you have. Shake hands with the stable master. Nod once to the headman, who doesn't look up from his stew. Then you pass through the same gate you entered, boots softer now on the slush. The road stretches ahead, shining in the pale morning light. And with each step, you leave a little of the cold behind. A little of the silence. A little of the fear. But none of the lessons. Because winter has a way of stripping you bare. But it also shows you what cannot be taken. And you? You're still here. You follow the road south. Not because it's marked on any map you trust, and certainly not because it's easy, but because it feels right. It bends where the wind breaks, follows rivers where the ground is softer, and rises only where the hills demand it. Each morning brings new aches, but fewer. Each breath cuts a little less sharply. And the snow, once a constant, suffocating presence, now appears in patches. Just traces along the hedgerows, hiding in the hollows, trying to pretend it still owns the place. But it doesn't. Not anymore. The trees are different here too, thinner, yes, but greener. Not lush, not full. But alive. You see buds the size of pinheads on the tips of branches. You smell the sharp bite of thawing earth. You even hear something you haven't heard in what feels like years. Birdsong. Not a desperate squawk for food or warning, but a song. A trill, reckless and bright, like a dare aimed straight at the sky. It stops you in your tracks. You close your eyes. And for one quiet second, you let yourself believe this is over. But winter doesn't vanish. It retreats. And sometimes it bites hardest just before it goes. You learn that lesson again just 3 days later. It starts with a sky that feels too still, clouds flat as wet wool, sun pale and expressionless. By noon, the wind returns. Not wild, but sharp. It stings. Your hands go stiff. Your breath begins to smoke again. By nightfall, the snow's back. Only a dusting, but enough. You find shelter beneath the overhang of an abandoned shrine, its roof half collapsed, the altar long stolen. You press against the back wall, knees to chest, cloak pulled high, listening to the snow hiss as it settles. And you feel it again. That old fear. The one that whispers, you're still not safe. But then morning comes. And you're still breathing. You rise slowly, brush snow from your shoulders, and step back into the world. The sky is clear. The snow? Melting again. Like winter threw one last punch just to remind you who you were dealing with. You walk on. You pass through ruins, old Roman stones still standing where entire villages have vanished. A broken aqueduct arches overhead like the bones of a giant, forgotten by time. You meet a man on the road, skin like leather, teeth stained with bark, pulling a sled with 2 pigs and a chicken balanced in a crate. Don't trust the sun, he says. It lies. You nod. That feels true. He offers you a boiled egg. You offer him a story. That's the deal, apparently. He listens with a smile. Then, as he departs, he says, tell that story to the next soul. Keep it moving. Like heat. You will. By now, you've lost track of how long you've been walking. The days bleed together. But the signs of the seasons change are everywhere. Small blue diamond streams that gurgle instead of freeze. Small blue diamond boots that leave mud instead of frozen prints. Small blue diamond faces, and doorways, no longer hiding behind shutters. In one village, children throw snowballs just to watch them melt on impact. In another, a widow gives you a slice of onion pie, no explanation, no words. Just hands it to you with a look that says, we both know what it cost to get here. And one evening, just as the sky fades into violet and gold, you find it. A field of crocuses. Tiny. Purple. Defiant. Growing right through the snow. You drop to one knee, not to pray, but just to stare. Because that's hope, sprouting from a world that almost forgot how. You sleep that night under a tree. No fire. No walls. But you're warm enough. And when you wake, your face is wet. Not from snow. Not from melted ice. From rain. A soft, gentle drizzle. The kind that smells like leaves. The kind that rinses the dirt from stone, that sings in gutters, that whispers down windows like lullabies. You lift your face to it, eyes closed. And smile. Because you made it. Not just through snow. Through winter. Through everything it tried to take from you. Your warmth. Your faith. Your name. It didn't win. You rise slowly, cloak heavy with rain, and take the next step forward. Not just a traveler now. A survivor. And, somehow, in spite of everything, still human. The rain lasts 3 days. Not the kind that drenches and destroys, but a steady, soothing fall that seems to wash the frost from the world. Each morning you wake damp, but not shivering. The ground beneath you no longer bites, it yields. Mushy, cold, and smelling of old leaves and thawed rot, but alive. The mud clings to your boots. Your cloak gains weight with every mile. But you wouldn't trade this for all the dry winters in the world. Because this slow, glorious melting feels like victory. The birds are back in earnest now. You hear them even when you can't see them. Warbling. Chattering. Bickering over twigs. You pass a crow dragging a shiny tin button toward a nest as if it were a crown jewel. Even the trees seem to stretch. Not green yet, but looser. Relaxed. The forests no longer feel like tombs. They feel like they're waking up. And so are you. Your walk is steadier. You don't flinch at shadows anymore. You don't check over your shoulder at every gust of wind. The tension that lived in your shoulders since the first snow now sits somewhere behind you, like a memory you've outgrown. And then, you hear it. Distant at first. A dull, rhythmic pounding, like someone hammering at the sky. You crest a hill, part the wet bramble, and see them. People. Not one or two, but a crowd. A spring market. Colorful awnings stretch between trees. People laugh. Shout. Argue over turnips. Horses clomp past, their hooves sloshing in the soft earth. There's music, badly played, but joyful. A piper screeching his way through something that might once have been a hymn, and a drummer hitting every beat like it owes him money. Your legs carry you forward before your mind even catches up. The smells hit you first. Roast meat. Wet wool. Cider. Mud. Sweet bread. All of it too strong after weeks of cold air and quiet. You feel dizzy with it. The crush of people is overwhelming. Their bodies steaming in damp cloaks. Their voices overlapping in half a dozen dialects. You freeze. Not from fear. From choice. So much life all at once. It's a festival of survival. Not for a saint, not for a king. Just for the fact that you're all still here. That the snow didn't swallow you. That the wolves found other prey. That the dark nights, the long days, the empty bowls didn't win. You wander like a ghost, through booths, past beggars and bakers and bards. A potter sells cups painted with little suns. A woman with a basket of candles offers you one for free. For warmth, she says, and her smile doesn't even look forced. You watch a child bite into a steaming apple tart and let the filling scald her tongue. She doesn't cry. She laughs. She licks her fingers and says, "It was worth it." And somehow, that's the moment that breaks you. Not with tears, but with laughter. Soft at first. Then fuller. Because of course it was worth it. All of it. Every frozen toe. Every bitter night. Every step through slush and shadow and silence. You find a spot beneath a canvas and buy a bowl of stew. It costs too much. You don't care. You sit on a wet log and eat it slow. And for the first time all winter, you don't eat like it might be your last meal. You savor it. Later, you help a vendor lift a barrel stuck in the mud. He grunts. You grunt. The barrel sloshes and nearly topples. You both laugh. He hands you a piece of cheese as thanks. No questions asked. That night, you sleep in a hayloft. Warm. Dry. Surrounded by the smell of animals and old straw. And dreams, real dreams, return. Not nightmares of snow and hunger. But images of rivers flowing. Of hills turning green. Of feasts shared by firelight. Of songs sung without fear of waking someone who might steal your boots. The next morning, you wake to sunlight. Actual, golden sunlight, piercing through cracks in the wood, falling across your face. You lie there for a long time. Not moving. Just letting it happen. You remember the first time the cold hit you. The first time you realized winter wasn't a season, it was a war. Fought with firewood and silence and 1,000 small decisions every day that all amounted to one question: will I survive this? And you did. Not alone. But enough. The people who gave you bread. The ones who shared fire. The strangers who didn't close their doors. And now, as the sunlight warms your face and the village buzzes with the sounds of another morning, you realize something even more astonishing than survival. You're ready. Not just to walk. Not just to eat. But to begin again. You leave the hayloft just as the village stirs, the fog of morning rising like breath from the ground. Chickens shuffle out from beneath carts. A man yawns into the open air, stretching like someone who has earned the right to wake slowly. You don't rush. Not anymore. Your body knows how to move through cold, how to conserve, how to last. But now, it's learning how to be gentle again. Your hands no longer clench against frost. Your shoulders no longer brace against the wind before it arrives. You walk through the square with your pack lighter than it was, because you've left pieces of the winter behind, like shedding old bark. You nod to the baker, who's dusting flour across a wide board. You offer a quiet good morning to the girl you saw licking tart filling off her fingers the day before. She waves. No suspicion. No fear. Just spring. The road south lies open. Not clear, there's still mud, and still puddles, and still the occasional cold snap whispering that winter isn't done playing. But the land is changing. Where once there was nothing but white, now there's green. Faint. Fuzzy. Almost shy. But there. Little weeds pushing through stones. Grass like baby hair edging along paths. Buds coiled tight on apple trees like secrets waiting to be told. You walk slower now. Not from weakness, but wonder. Because the silence is no longer empty, it's full. Full of insects waking up. Of distant rivers murmuring. Of birds arguing over nest real estate. The whole world feels like it's exhaling. So are you. You follow the road past fields beginning to steam in the morning light, past frozen streams breaking into laughter, past the burnt husks of trees that survived fire and frost alike. And then you see it. A city. Far off, perched on a rise, its walls lit golden by the rising sun. Not grand. Not royal. Just standing. Alive. The smoke curling from its chimney smells of cooking fat and hearth fire. Flags move in the breeze. You can't read them from here, but they flutter like signals from another world, the kind of place where markets are open, and boots are mended, and stories are told for coins instead of just survival. You pause at the crest of the hill and let the view settle into you. You are not the same person who first stepped into the storm. You are stronger. Not harder. Not colder. Stronger. Because you have walked with hunger in your belly, and still shared food. You felt your blood chill in your veins, and still lifted others up. You've stared into the dead eyes of winter, and blinked last. And now, as the snow recedes and the thaw reveals the bones of what was, you carry forward not just scars, but wisdom. You descend the hill as bells ring in the distance, real ones this time. Church bells, perhaps. Or market bells. Or maybe just the sound of the city waking up to the warmth of a sun it thought might never return. Each step feels lighter. You pass through the gates unnoticed. Another traveler. Another figure in a crowd that knows what it means to lose and keep going. The streets are still damp, but people laugh as they slip. Someone's playing a fiddle on a corner. A tavern door bangs open, and the smell of yeast and garlic rolls out like a welcome mat. You enter the square and stop. Because here, in this place, you have made it. You survived the storm. You endured the ice. You outran the wolves, outlasted the hunger, and outwitted the silence. Now you rest. Now you listen to stories. Now you tell one. Maybe to a child sitting too close to a fire. Maybe to a stranger who looks like they just walked out of the wind. Or maybe just to yourself, when the next winter comes, and the snow begins to fall again, and some part of you whispers, you won't make it this time. Because you'll remember. You already did. And that story will be enough to carry you through the dark once more. Underscore 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 underscore. Now, close your eyes. Let the snow drift gently away. Let the ice crack and melt. Let the wind grow quiet. The fire is warm. Your cloak is dry. The world is green again. You are not cold. You are not afraid. You are home. End of script. Sweet dreams.